All right, man. So this week we are back here with another Game of Spades fragrance from Joe Milano. This time it's going to be Game of Spades Ace from Joe Milano. And this is going to be their take on Labo's Another 13. All right. So again, as you can see, you've got the same presentation pretty much as what you're getting with all of the other Game of Spades fragrances. At least within this luxury collection anyway. So you get the spade on the front of the box here, the name of the fragrance up top, and then of course this is a parfum concentration. The color scheme with this is basically like black and silver. All right, and you've got nothing on either side here, nothing on the top, other than just kind of like spade and diamond sort of and club design here. And then on the back, you've got like the ingredients, the barcode, stuff like that. All right. And then obviously, like all of the others, this is going to open up kind of coffin style like that. Joe Milano over here, and then you get the bottle over here. All right. And also, you get the spade here on top of the cap. The cap is that sort of, kind of like metal, heavy metal sort of cap that you get with all of the other Game of Spades fragrances. And again, this is like a black and silver color scheme. You can see through this bottle. It is kind of like slightly translucent. Game of Spades Ace here on the front of the bottle. And then on the bottom here, you have a sticker with the actual batch number as well. All right. And then just like all of the others, you get a really, really good pressurized sprayer on this fragrance. And there are definitely some differences in the notes between Game of Spades Ace and the original Labo Another 13. So to kind of go over the Labo notes, the top notes of Another 13 are going to be pear, apple, and citruses. In the mid, you have ambrette, amyl salicylate, moss, and jasmine. And then in the base, you have iso super, cetilox, ambretolide, and helvetolide. All right. So a lot of what sounds like, kind of aroma chemicals and stuff like that within Another 13. Now, the note breakdown is definitely going to be a lot different and a lot less than what you get with Another 13. So in the top notes of Game of Spades Ace, you get lemon zest and orange blossom. In the mid, you get aromatic spices. And then in the base, you get wood, amber, and musk. So a very, very simple sort of note breakdown when compared to the note breakdown of Another 13. Now, are there like differences in smell between this and Another 13? Absolutely there are. This fragrance so far, and I mean, I don't want to kind of say this like it's a bad fragrance, but what I will say is out of all of the other, Game of Spades fragrances that I've tried so far, this one to me seems to be the most sort of far off or, most removed from the original scent profile. All right. There are definitely, some slight sort of differences between some of the other fragrances in the Game of Spades line and the original counterparts. But this one to me, like I said, was definitely the one that seemed, the furthest from the original. So when you first spray on Another 13, you get a huge dose of like that really fresh pear, the apple, the citruses. Like it smells really fresh, really fruity, and really kind of musky, almost sort of powdery. But the fruits really give the opening of that fragrance, like it really is amazing to me. Whereas with the opening of Game of Spades Ace, it's definitely not as exciting to me. You don't get the same sort of fresh, fruity kind of feel that you get from Another 13 in this. This is definitely going to be a lot more. It to me, it just smells a lot more sweeter. Yeah, a lot more sweeter and not as sort of fresh and airy as what you get with another 13. Like definitely the texture of Game of Spades Ace is, I would say, completely different than what you get with another 13. Also, the projection on the Game of Spades Ace is not going to be nearly as good as what I'm getting with the Labo. Now, that is kind of starting off. As the fragrances start to kind of dry down, I do feel like Game of Spades Ace does start to become a little bit closer. But what I will say is, all throughout the entire life of the fragrance, the Labo always seems to have more of like the sort of fresher, sort of texture to the fragrance than what the Game of Spades Ace does. This always seems to be a little bit more sweeter and denser, but not dense to the point where like it's actually stronger than the Labo, which if that makes any sense. So this seems sweeter and denser, but at the same time, the projection is definitely lower than what it is in the Labo. Now, you do definitely kind of get that same sort of almost powdery, kind of musky sort of feel from this fragrance as well. But it's not on the same level as the Labo. And to me, the Labo definitely smells, it does smell higher quality for sure. So, like I said, I do think that some of the actual notes in the Labo, I think, are kind of like more proprietary sort of, ingredients that either only Labo has access to or only certain perfumers do. So, I mean, it makes sense that the note breakdown on this would be completely different. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say just the in terms of like how close it comes in smell, it doesn't seem to be that close to me. At least, not starting off. Now, again, once you kind of get into the dry down, where it starts to become like this sort of musky, almost sort of like metallic feeling sort of fragrance, musky and sort of powdery and metallic, I guess you could say. To me, this does start to become closer, the Game of Spades Ace, but it never really completely gets there to me. So it is a decent fragrance. It is to me better than the Soothing Zephyr from Paris Corner. I do think that this is closer than that, but to me, it's just not as good. Now, this was definitely the cheapest Game of Spades fragrance from Joe Milano that I was able to pick up. I picked this one up from LaBelle Perfumes for like, I want to say it was like $55 or $56. Typically, these normally go for like around 60 to 70. Even like the Game of Spades High Roller, that one is closer to $80. That one and the Full House. So the range of some of these fragrances are kind of up and down, but I feel like for the most part, most of them have been $60+. Whereas, like I said, this one was like in the mid 50s, and I guess I kind of understand why that is. This one probably is not as popular because it just doesn't come as close to the original as what some of the other Joe Milano fragrances do. All right. Now, performance wise, like I mentioned before, this doesn't project as good as what you get with the Labo. I would say it's about half the projection that you get with the Another 13. So that is a bit of a disappointment there. In terms of like the overall longevity, This is a solid fragrance when it comes to longevity. You are going to get about 7 to 8 hours or so on skin of total longevity with this fragrance, but I easily get over 10, with the Labo fragrance. So, I get significantly more performance out of the Another 13. Now, yes, the Another 13 is significantly more in terms of price. I believe that fragrance for 100 ml is over $300, whereas again, this one is going to be like a $50 to $60 fragrance. But it definitely does smell like it. The gap in terms of, just the overall quality, the performance, just everything all together, I think it is a pretty large gap. All right. The projection on this, I would say it's about an hour to an hour and a half or so. All right. Now, for my overall closeness rating on this fragrance, this to me is going to be about an 80%. So I mean, it's not like terrible, but I do think I think they could have possibly done better than what they did with this. This is definitely my least favorite out of all of the sort of, Joe Milano Game of Spades fragrances that I've smelled so far. So also, if I'm going to just give this fragrance an overall rating in terms of how I like it, this one to me is going to be like a 6.5. So, definitely not the best. I can't really say that I'm going to be keeping this fragrance. Now, at the same time, I don't think that I'm necessarily looking to go out and purchase another 13, not unless I can get like a really good deal on it, or maybe do like a trade or a swap or something like that. Because I mean, while I do like this fragrance or this scent profile, I can't see myself paying over $300 like I did for something like Louis Vuitton's Imagination for it. I mean, it is very nice. I think that this scent profile is one that has very high versatility. So I think you could probably wear it at any time of the year. And I think the compliment factor and the likability, or the overall sort of mass appeal of something like Another 13, I think is super high. So I do think that it is a very high value sort of fragrance for sure, because of how wearable it is, because of, the potential compliment factor, the mass appeal to it. But at least for me, it's just not necessarily something that I would want to spend $300+ on. Not right now, anyway. All right. So yeah, man, I would give this one a solid like 6.5 out of 10. It's just okay to me for the most part. So like I said, this is not necessarily one that I'll be keeping. To my knowledge, I mean, with the Joe Milano fragrances, they don't really tend to be fragrances, at least from what I've seen, that need to kind of maturate and, over time they, start to completely change. I've had my Game of Spades wild card for months now, and that fragrance to me, it smells, pretty much the same as what it did when I first got it. Same thing with Game of Spades Win. So, I don't necessarily think that I'll get, really too much difference out of, sort of letting this fragrance sit. Maybe some of you all have kind of gotten, a different sort of smell out of this after a few months or so. Definitely let me know in the comments. But at least for me, I don't think I'll be holding on to this fragrance. All right. So that is my take on Game of Spades Ace from Joe Milano. Let me know in the comments if you all have smelled this fragrance, and if so, do you agree with my assessment of how close this comes to Another 13 from Labo? All right. Also, I'll have links in the description to where you can pick this one up if you're interested. And also, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see y'all in the next video.